Welcome to the Portland Interior Designer Spotlight Series, featuring in-depth interviews with some of Portland's most influential and innovative interior designers. These public conversations, sponsored by Ceilume and PortlandArchitecture.com, are a nexus for Portland's vibrant design community, an opportunity for casual networking, and the perfect place to hear about the next big thing in Portland design. Now, please join us at Ceilume's beautiful ceiling showroom in the heart of Portland's East Side Industrial District for Portland Interior Designer Spotlight.
Tonight's event, we've got Jim Staicoff, whose extensive portfolio includes award-winning commercial and residential interiors throughout the Pacific Northwest, including Portland's striking Hotel Modera, Hotel Lucia, Hotel Murano in Tacoma, Burgerville at the Portland Airport, and the upcoming Woodlark Hotel here in town, and the Hotel Max in Seattle. Jim is also a mentor for the interior design students at the Art Institute of Portland, and for the past few years has been one of the designers selected to participate in the Molly's Fun Design Competition at the Portland Homes and Gardens Show. Joining Jim in conversation will be noted architecture and design writer Brian Libby. Brian's byline frequently appears in the New York Times, Dwell, Metropolis, Architect Magazine, Contract Design and Ecostructure, and his blog, Portland Architecture, is the city's most prominent resource for news and in-depth coverage of projects and issues encompassing the regional design community. We're very happy to host this event in Ceilume's Portland showroom. We're the only manufacturer-owned ceiling showroom in North America, which we opened here as a resource for the interior design industry. And without further delay, please allow me to introduce Jim Staicoff and Brian Libby.
Jim, thanks for coming. I wonder if we could start by going back a little bit. And I wonder, I always find it interesting that some of us know exactly what we want to do from a young age, and some of us have to kind of take a longer path there, like I did. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about initially getting interested in design and realizing that this was something you wanted to do, and what your situation was there, and how you kind of. I know we could probably have a whole conversation about that, or you could even lie down on the sofa, but I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the first seeds of inspiration in getting in design and possibly having a career in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the first time I've ever spoken into a microphone. So
we were looking into Mr. Microphone, but there wasn't one available.
Well, I had one of those because that's how you picked up girls in the 80s. So before there was internet and Tinder. So anyway, this is mostly going to be a comedy routine, but there's slides going on, but this is only so you don't have to look at me. There's sketches, I was going to put in funny faces also, but I forgot. But there's examples of the process of design. So I draw freehand a lot, which is what these happen to be illustrating. So if something shows up that catches my attention, I'll bring it up. I started sketching when I was young. This is relevant because first I started drawing cartoon characters. The moment I stole my neighbor's art books and realized there was nudity, I started drawing nude women. So I apologize to anybody who is offended by that, but this is what I did. Realized I had artistic talent and thought, how can I make money as an artist? I realized I couldn't. In St. Louis, there's no architecture school. I applied to the University of Kansas that had reciprocity. They had a kick-ass architectural school. So I applied there. I went there. I realized 3/4 of the way through that I was better at interior design than architecture, and started doing interiors. It just felt like I was drawn to sculpting the interior, not decorating, but actually creating architectural. I cared about things like spatial sequencing, but it was all in terms of how the interior felt and what was the emotional response. Even at an early age, I was thinking about how do people feel as they're, entering a space, and how do I control how they feel? Because I really feel, and I know most of you, or a lot of you are designers, I think, and I may just be rationalizing my existence, but most people I think that are designers are OCD. They feel the need to take control of a situation and to modify the space and make it their own. All designers are talented. So in their own way, the key, I think, is finding what you're good at. So I did that, and I got through architecture school. I started working as an architect and was not happy, wasn't good at exterior work, and kind of just, luckily, due to one of my mentors, of which there are two in my life, one of which will come up later in the slides because of a house I worked on a couple of years ago in Santa Barbara. They allowed me to kind of find my own path, and I became essentially, before there was such a thing, I was an interior architect. So, I mean, I think that's in a really quick summary. I moved to Portland from St. Louis in '92. I worked for Soderstrom Architects for 3 years and honed my craft. I met Denise Corso, who became my business partner. We became Corso Staicoff in 2006, and every project we were designing at the time got published. We just had that. That's how I got into hospitality, actually, because of Denise. And then I realized that it was the one thing I was really, really good at. So I was doing residential and commercial up until then. This is really a fragmented explanation, but this is kind of how my brain works, so you'll just have to deal with it. So
that's part of what we love. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how every designer's approach and the way they frame the questions and the problems is different. But I was attracted to that idea because it's so something you can feel in some of these designs, that there's the idea of telling a story is a mechanism for unifying all the small and large details of a design and of your approach.
Right. So this is especially in hospitality design, which is the only thing we sell now because we happen to be really good at it. So we design hotels, we design restaurants. You'll see a lot of residential work in here because that's what I did before. But our sweet spot is doing hotels, and we, I forgot the question now.
Narrative.
Narrative, thank you. So we, even before this was a specialty, there are now brand design firms, incredibly talented brand design firms who make a lot more money than interior designers who around the country. One is in town called OMFG, who we're working with on the Woodlark Hotel project. Another one we work with is in New York called Love and War. But these firms specifically decide a direction and an aesthetic for, in my case, for a hotel. Narrative is important because it deals with emotional experience. How do you heighten the guest experience or the client experience at every step of the way? So as an example, when we design a project now, we start with an experience plan. So you designers, essentially it's a bubble diagram, but it's approaching it differently because you're thinking, what does the end user feel as you're walking through the space? You enter, what's the first thing the guest feels outside the building? What do you feel when you walk in? And where's the first, this isn't about signage, this is more about information that's offered to engage the end user or the guest. How do we bring them into the space? How do we, in hotels, how do we create an Instagrammable moment where you will feel, that there's something happening that you love so much that you want to share it with your friends? Here's Zipatoni. This is actually what I was waiting for. I was stalling until this came up. This was designed in 1997. I believe it's the first branded space with a true narrative. This space is in St. Louis, Missouri. It's a 60,000 square foot advertising agency. These first 8 photos are that. And it was this whacked out space where we had a curator who didn't find art for us. He found old metal crap in junkyards and he would install it in the space. You can see if you look at the outer edges and there's just fire extinguishers, and this came out of an old theater that was being torn down in St. Louis. But they had enough square footage. That's the sign when you walk in from the front door. It's just it's like this 15-foot sign that used to be the 905 in St. Louis, the 905 liquor store. They converted it to the sign. This is graphics that we did, or the elevations that we did for the space. So it's the weirdest space ever, but it won a National Design Award for a magazine that's no longer in existence called Environments Magazine. Michael Graves had won it the year before, and I won it the next year, and now it doesn't exist anymore. So,
well, you still got the clip.
Too bad, but yeah, the important thing is I got so it's published, so I exist. So-
related to some of that, I was wondering, you were talking about, the client, and in your Q&A with your Oregonian, you emphasized sort of the need, particularly in hospitality design and certain other types of commercial design, to serve the client and be thinking from the client's perspective. And I'm interested in asking you about that kind of push-pull of how, it seems like there is a kind of fingerprint that exists in your work and the work of most designers who we like, and yet, in retail and hospitality design, there does seem to be maybe a greater attention paid to how the users are using the space, and basically kind of blending art and science, I guess, in a way.
It is, especially, well, actually, this is a good example, Burgerville. This is my most commercial space, but I love, these are early examples for the Burgerville Portland, which this is what it ended up, but it's still in 300 square feet. It's impactful in the Portland airport. There's cool things happening that haven't been done before. It's cerused wood with a CNC cutout. This is their Tigard store. But it's about offering a solution to the client. We feel that there's not one solution to a problem. There's 10. We find the best solution. We offer it to the client. They react and they pick what they want, but we won't show a crap solution. There's a rule in designers, at least for you guys. The designer or the client always picks the worst scheme. Our rule is don't show a shit scheme. So that, because we're creative, this is what we do. I mean, all designers are creative. So let's show enough stuff so that we believe in. Let's work it until it works and impress the client and do a great job. And not be high maintenance divas. You figure out what's the hero of the narrative or of the scheme. There's ways to it allows you to hone in on the meat and the guts of what's really important, because everything in the space is not the hero. Only a few things are. You get the greatest impact for the smallest amount of money. Hotels spend a small amount of money because everything they do, there's 300 rooms or 200 rooms. So every decision you make on a side table or a rug is amplified 300 times. So every decision is critical. You have to decide how do you get the most bang for your money? You wouldn't believe how small the budget is on carpeting in hotel rooms. Because it gets changed out because people abuse. The stuff they do in hotel rooms we can't talk about today. The stuff I've seen, I have seen stuff like you would not believe. One of the biggest issues in hotel rooms, this is the only time I'm going there, lubrication. Lube is the worst thing for hotels because I apologize for this in advance. I'm not going to take this.
What kind of hotel are we talking about here?
Well, any hotel, because the rule that what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. It's all about all hotels. What you do in a hotel, you would never do at your house. So we have to deal with things like handprints on the headboard, which don't come out because the lube is not. It says water soluble. It doesn't come out of some fabric. So we test that kind of thing. And again, I apologize for that. But we have to think about practical things like how do people act in a room. We have to think about that. What's the worst thing that can happen? Because there are those people that do the worst thing you could imagine. So we have to safeguard against that because, if you install a carpet that shows something that you don't want to have to ever see, it has to be changed out in 3 months, and then you're not looking good in front of the client.
If you were to sort of put on your hat of being not just a designer, but a potential customer or visitor to a place, what would you like to see in a Portland hotel that hasn't been built?
I am constantly trying to figure out with my staff what's going to happen next in hotels. We're not content to look in magazines and on the internet and find out what's been done and mimic that, because that idea is already, it took a year to get built. It took 2 years to get the drawings done and to get passed to the client. So that's a 3-year-old idea. We don't care. And especially in Portland, because rustic wood is in every restaurant and every strip mall. We don't care. Local, organic, farm to table, artisanal. That's in Iowa and Arkansas and Connecticut. We're so food forward. We have to figure out what's going to happen in Portland. We're dealing with this right now because we're doing the Hotel Woodlark, which is at 9th and Alder.
Yeah,
downtown.
Lovely old downtown building, early 20th century downtown building.
We're combining 2 hotels that are on the historic registry but the charters were submitted at separate times, so they have to look like the time in which they were built, though they're different, but it has to be one space, but it has to feel like the same space, and it's a really interesting project.
It seems like...
I'm being kind, because I don't want to go into detail. So, that said, we're trying to figure that out for the Woodlark, but also in my own time, because I'm insane and fanatical, I have been writing a profile about what does Portland need. There's a thing now called microstay rooms that's happening first in Europe and then it's happening now in New York and Chicago. A couple of firms are championing. Is that even a word?
Championing.
Okay, you're going to need to help me on this kind of stuff.
No more whiskey for you.
An 8-foot, I know, I actually stopped. An 8-foot room plate. So it's 8 foot wide. So the cost is a lot less. Essentially, it's a hostel with amenities. It's the ace if you could afford to stay there and it was done really well. So I'm going to suggest a couple of things that we came up with.
And I love that idea. You know, it's making design affordable to more people.
Exactly. I read another article today about this on another hotel that's coming out. These are called microstay rooms, so it's a whole different attitude. So the hostel with amenities was on a website that I follow religiously called hotelchatter.com. They were writing and raving about this idea of an 8-foot room plate where you've got a huge window at the end of the room. The king-size bed is there, so the bed rocks. The TV is built into the wall. So, you know, you've got a super small bathroom that has the vanity out in the room. The toilet and the shower are in the same room so that when you shower, the toilet gets wet, big deal because it's a hotel. You know, the desk is next to the vanity. So it's a really thin room, but it sells for very little money. So people who have suddenly have a lot of money, millennials, every hotel group in the country is chasing millennials now. We, us included, on these projects, because the millennial with money is what we care about, because they're interested in the experience. What happens when you show up in Portland? You want a real, authentic Portland experience that goes past Portlandia. You want to, I mean, because that's how people view our city. Mm-hmm. But there is an authentic experience here that goes past food carts and the whole, you know, food scene that the New York Times stalks us religiously about. So a few suggestions. For example, we're talking especially about people who are for example, a think tank. The whole upper floor could be, for example, 8 rooms that are completely wired to the point where they have an independent network where everybody, you can take the space over for a month. Everybody sleeps in private rooms, but they meet in a central room. Everybody is on an independent network run by the hotel. It has its own messaging service. It has its own network that's completely private. Nobody has access to it. There's another floor that's only office space that you rent by the hour. A salesman that shows up who wants to show his product for 2 days, he rents by the hour. He sleeps upstairs. He comes down and presents in a room. He keeps all his stuff there. It's less expensive for him. A lawyer who wants to do depositions. I mean, that kind of thing. This is happening in Europe and in New York already.
Yeah.
So, but Portland doesn't have access to that kind of thing.
But it's definitely an interesting trend.
It's a concept that I think it's essentially a hotel room for business. And it has a bathroom. It doesn't have windows. You tend not to sleep there, but it satisfies whatever you need.
It's like design isn't just the type of pillows you have and
right.
The architecture itself. It's also, are you sort of curating a kind of experience? And in this case, it seems like the interesting part of the trend is bringing people from the community into the hotel itself and having that kind of mingling going on.
Yeah. That's the key, I think. Hotels don't want you to stay in the room. They want you to sleep in the room. They want you down in the lobby spending money. We monetize every seat. So you hang out, you drink, you eat if you want. It's completely like Wi-Fi's free. You plug in if you need to. There's access points everywhere where you have the ability to wire. To be wired. We also suggested the possibility of something that Portland does, but no other, as far as I know, nobody else does, which is like a think and drink, a curated think and drink meeting that happens every week. This would be a wonderful introduction to Portland. A Think and Drink is where you have someone of interest starts a discussion in a room like this.
Right.
You talk about a subject of interest to a lot of people. It's essentially TED Talks brought down to a personal level. So, and it's something that's interesting that you discuss. And everyone's eating, everyone's drinking, everyone's spending money, and everyone's together. This is that sense of community that we stress and that we crave in for hotels.
Yeah.
Portland is changing so quickly. The interior almost needs to be mobile. Like food carts, everybody has food carts now. What's next past food carts? Maybe we just have restaurant space that changes out quarterly. Maybe it's an event. It becomes a deal for the locals. You want the locals to show up in Portland. So maybe whoever's the next Nong. Like, Nong is the most extraordinary success story.
Food cart purveyor, who a maker of extraordinary chicken and rice.
One item on the menu.
One item on the menu, and chicken and rice is like saying Sgt. Pepper's is a rock record or something. It's
Good
just
point, yeah.
She makes it soulful and it sings.
Yeah.
We could divert the conversation
for
to
hours. We could talk about Nong because I adore her. But who's the next Nong? Let's have her occupy a space in the hotel for a month or for a quarter. It's just the idea that we're constantly changing. We have an art installation where it's happening. It's changing. The moment you decide that Portland is this, it's no longer that. So why decide that? Why not just allow for the transparency and the constant change, where it's the next thing? And that's what I think people who are traveling to Portland are going to desire. I think that younger people are not dependent on cars. Uber's here now, thank God. The light rail is here. Southeast is dying for a hotel. So
absolutely.
This is something I'm pushing for, and I presented yesterday to a major hotel firm.
I wanted to also ask you about a newer endeavor. You've got a kind of you expanded into wallpaper design, and I was interested in how you got to there and what you were looking for, that you felt like you could create that you weren't seeing, and what you love about that product.
I am a minimalist who loves pattern and ornamentation. When the recession hit, I was afraid I was never going to design again, like every other designer in Portland felt that. So we thought, let's invent a wall. I know the market so well, let's come up with stuff that's never been done before. So we created a wallpaper company that I wish I had more time to spend on it, but we're too busy. We do custom wallpaper, we do printed wallpaper. The great thing about digital printing is it can become whatever you want. You can change scale, you can adapt it to a wall. It was really fascinating to write a business plan. I actually presented to banks. I decided not to get financing because I didn't want that extra debt, especially during that time. We still have it going. I've written I think over $10,000 in contracts this month. And this is with me not trying. So if I was smart and had more time, I would hire someone to run the wallpaper company. But my big love is obviously, doing hotels, which we gave ourselves 2 years to become the best hotel designer in the Northwest. It was a challenge because we had a few hotels done, but we now have, between myself and my senior designer, we've got almost 40 hotels under our belt.
Wow.
So it's really our sweet spot. It's what we love, and I think it's what we do best. I'm going to switch into the next subject you were probably going to bring up.
No, it's all good.
Which is, I believe that designers are hired not because of the quality of design, because everybody's a good designer. I mean, really, everybody has value. I think it's the way you treat clients, the way you perform. The CEO of Provenance said to me when I first started working with him again, he said, make it easy for me to hire you. So that was my goal. Because what I was doing, I was trading the right for him to use me on every project. I'm now touching 13 of their 16 properties.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's pick out a carpet for the corridor, or we need a new cart to hold water. But sometimes it's let's design an entire new hotel like the Woodlark, which is going to be the first new boutique hotel in Portland since the Nines was built before the recession. So I mean it's keeping them happy and listening to them and being clever and creative and mobile enough to jump when they say jump. Because I think it's about respect, and I think that's the key to being a successful designer. It's not how good you design. Very few. I mean, there are always exceptions. I mean, obviously Nike hires the best designers, that they can find, which is why they're working with Skylab, for example. But in the most part, people want that human relationship. If they like you, if they enjoy working with you, if you're fun and not annoying and not high maintenance, and you don't call them at 2 a.m. and cry about the contractor changing your design, you're going to win with this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, who are? I wonder, maybe to wrap up, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about if there are any particular either designers or designs in Portland, either with respect to hospitality or restaurants or retail. But if you think of over the last couple of years, are there any particular spaces or designers' work who you've enjoyed?
On a national level, I will start first, and
Sure.
then I'll answer your actual question. This is very politician of me. Like my god of all gods is, who we just talked about, Cristiano, is Marcel Wanders, who I think he's a genius product designer, pattern designer, hotel designer. If I could be him over anyone else, especially because he's actually attractive and thin, I would want to be him. On a local level, the best hospitality designer, or actually I shouldn't have said local yet, but in terms of USA, Roman and Williams are the gods of hotel design, as far as I'm concerned. What they touch, they just issued, and Jamie, you saw this today, the hotel in Chicago, they just issued photos today of this Chicago athletic club that they completely renovated. It is just the most extraordinary hotel. I mean, I look at the photos and I'm like, because we will never be at that level. But
Yeah.
it's the kind of thing we want to be. I mean, we want to be the Roman and Williams of the West Coast. I mean, we won't be, but that's what we aspire to. Locally, I mean, and this relates luckily to Ceilume, who has been so kind to host us. Andy Hess, who was here and drew like 850 people last month. Andy Hess, I adore. And I hope she will see this. And I've told her this every time I see her. I admire the hell out of her. Her restaurant design. I recommended her to do a hotel that I could have done. I mean, to do a restaurant, actually, not a hotel. I want to do the hotel. I want her to do the restaurant in this new project. Because I think she's extraordinary. So I love working with her.
Yeah,
Or I haven't worked with her yet. I love what she does. I love the way her brain thinks. I think she's incredibly talented. We are lucky in a town of 500,000 people, but to have Allied Works, Works Partnership, Holst Architecture. Who else do we love? Skylab. I'm friends with all these owners, and or most of them at least. I love what Portland does. This is why I moved here. When I was in St. Louis in the 90s, I'm like, it is so hard to get anything built. The Zippatoni advertising agency accepted, because that was so weird that no one else could have done that. But we are blessed that people want to spend money. I mean, look at the space. This is a glorious space. I mean, you guys rocked it. So I wish you the best of luck. I want you to succeed. I will sell your product for you. We are lucky to be in this town. So, and this is why I moved here in '92.
Yeah. There's talent, isn't there? And then there's also a kind of special collaborative culture. Like, obviously, people want to win and they want to do well for themselves. But it seems like there's a collaborative culture here that doesn't exist everywhere.
It doesn't exist anywhere. I have never seen the kind of. It happens in the music scene, in the food scene, in the design scene. We are not combative with other designers. I mean, I look at Arlene Lord and adore her. I'm not saying I want to steal her work. I'm thinking I want her to succeed so well on every level. I mean, so big. So this is just how we are here in this town. So I just feel, I mean, I see us as a town of vagabonds who weren't happy elsewhere. So
well, it's like,
that's my story. So.
I always think of this article I read talking about how 150 years ago that there was this moment where the Oregon Trail kind of splits, and you have to decide whether or not you're going to go to California or to Oregon, and this is a gross oversimplification, but the basic idea I think still carries through, maybe in some subtle way, that those seeking kind of fame and fortune and wealth went to California, and those who were seeking kind of to have a great environment and to have a sort of communal culture and some of those types of values came to Oregon.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I look at this like Australia. You know, we're the criminals, where we showed up and and we love what we are. The whole idea of keep Portland weird, I mean, that's a real thing. It's not just an Instagrammable moment. I mean, that's like the perfect example of that Instagram photo. That's what we want to try to always recreate. I actually had a client try to do that in Seattle, like to recreate that idea. You know, on the side of the Hotel Max now, it's now ghost painted, so it looks like it's 30 years old. It's, it now says Seattle doesn't settle, because they want that, and I applaud that intention. But keep Portland weird is so inherently Portland that that there's no other city in the country like you
Seattle
said,
doesn't sell like
settle.
Settle. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I was gonna say, because they do a lot of selling.
They do sell. Yeah. Pour themselves out. No, I'm kidding. What we design is my favorite client, which happens to be the Provenance, because we do all their work. The CEO is exceptionally smart. His point is that this is why we get along. What we do best is we create a heightened sense of experience for the guest. We don't care about the architecture. Forgive me if there's any architects here. We care about how do we treat that guest. We care about the guest. We care about their experience from curb to desk to pillow. We want that to be seamless, and that's the kind of thing. You just don't decide to become a hotel designer. It's like hospitals. You just don't say, "Oh, I'm going to design a hospital," because there's too much background stuff you have to know. You have to learn about efficiencies. You have to learn about return on investment. What decision is going to make the most money? Because there's so much money being spent. I mean, I stay awake at night, obsessing about the fact that I'm spending, $5 million for a client, which I know is not a huge amount of money. Well, to me it is.
It's all relative, I guess.
It is, right? But, I mean, we have to find the best way to spend that money to get the greatest impact, so they have the greatest return on investment, so they keep calling me, because we want to keep them happy. So, obviously. So the best hotel in the country, I actually have been traveling a lot lately. We're looking to grab work in California. We're expanding our reach. So I've stayed at genius hotels recently. The Ace in Seattle and Ace in Portland were young. They didn't know what they were doing. They kept refining their trade. The Ace downtown LA is one of the great experiences in a hotel I've ever had. Every decision was dialed in, rethought, reconsidered, reinvented. I mean, every moment from, like I said, from the curb to the desk, a unique experience every step of the way. So that's one of them. On the other side of the coin, in Las Vegas, I just stayed in, because we had our big yearly HD Expo, which is our trade show for hospitality designers, and I stayed at a Philippe Stark hotel, which I'd never actually stayed in, the SLS Vegas, and it's struggling, but it was so beautifully designed, but it was miscast, I think, in terms of its location, in terms of its appeal. It had a huge, its brochure was huge. Meaning the amount of bros per square foot was out of control, which I've termed brochure. I made that up.
I would think that would be a waterfall that never is going to run dry.
I know, unfortunately. Stunning design, stunning architecture, but it didn't make sense in that location. It was in the old Sahara, so it's at the far ass end.
Oh, wow. So I've actually stayed at the Sahara.
Yeah, well, it's gone, and now the SLS is there, which is stunning. But the rooms, not joking, were $35 a night because nobody is interested in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they need some kind of prime rib buffet, and that will do the trick.
They need some. They need to do the circus kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But let's see, other hotels that I've loved. Everything Roman and Williams. I know I keep harping about them because I'm obsessed and infatuated. But everything they touch in New York, for example, the Viceroy, New York City, the Highline, New York City, the Refinery, New York City. I mean, those are extraordinary hotels, and so that would be my my choice.
Well, thanks so much for talking with me, Jim, and thanks to all of you for coming. And we'll probably still be around for a few minutes here, so feel free to come and say hi. And thanks to everyone involved from Ceilume and so forth for being involved and helping us to make this happen. And thanks again to all of you, and have a good night.
And if you're a designer, check out the product, because it really does rock. We're speccing it right now on a restaurant, a bar in Nashville. So, and not
Thank
just
you.
because of this. I mean, I like it. So, thank you guys very much.